Pesticides are widely used in agriculture and household settings to protect crops and to minimize pests. But they also bring concerns, especially for children. Understanding how to minimize the exposure is critical to optimizing the health of our children. So let's talk about it. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. David Berger, a board-certified pediatrician in Tampa, Florida. My focus is on making healthy kids. How do we optimize their nutrition? How do we minimize toxic exposures? And how do we improve detoxification systems? Today, we're going to be talking about pesticides. Now, I do have a companion video on organic foods, which goes more into this and specific things that we could be doing for food. So please check that out. I've put the link down in the show notes below. Now, why is this concerning? Well, kids are more vulnerable to the effects of pesticides. There are critical systems, such as their nervous systems and their immune systems, and they're still developing in children. And that does make them more susceptible to the toxins. Now, pesticides can also disrupt hormones and can potentially lead to developmental delays as well. Now, in addition to that, behavioral patterns are set early in life. So whether it's through nature and toxins or through nurture, those types of patterns are what they take with them into their life. And of course, behavior modification can change things, but once a pattern's set, it's kind of difficult for it to change. Now, when it comes to pesticides, there's a lot of things because, for instance, skin absorption. Now, kids have a higher surface area to body weight ratio, and that means that they absorb more pesticides relative to their size. Also, they tend to have more thinner skin. And of course, if they don't have hairier skin, or hair on their skin, then there's less of a barrier that if they roll around in something in the grass or whatever, that they're going to potentially have more skin direct contact as well. So there can also be absorption through lungs and eyes. So it can be breathed in as well. Of course, rubbing their hands to their eyes can be a problem as well. Now, also, kids do have more exposure through things such as activities like playing on a playground, running in fields, and maybe they're involved in gardening, but of course we have to make sure that they are doing that safely as well. But in terms of the long-term health in the health risks, exposures to certain pesticides have been linked to chronic conditions like asthma, developmental delays, behavioral disorders. There are also some studies that do suggest a potential association with childhood cancers. Now, what are the common sources, things that they're exposed to? So first, residues on produce. Now, there can be and washing the fruit and vegetables, the produce, can be very helpful in reducing the amount that they would be consuming. But that's not everything, because there's issues beyond the peel. If there are pesticides in the soil, in the water that's feeding that soil, and it gets into the roots, it can get up into the area of the fruit that's beyond the skin, beyond the peel. So you have to be really aware that it can be getting in that way as well. Now, there are lawn and garden products, and there are sprays, there are granules, there are weed killers that are used and especially where kids may be playing, and they can be lingering there. In addition, there can be indoor pest control on surfaces, contaminating the environment when it's being sprayed, etc. And there can be in the drinking water. In some areas, pesticides can be leaching into the groundwater. And it can also be, if there's a spray, appearing on the surfaces of lakes, etc., where the water can be exposed as well. Now, in Spain, they did a study of 2,800 individuals, and they found that there was a rise in autistic spectrum disorders in regions that had the highest amount of pesticide use compared to those who had the lowest pesticide use. Interestingly, they found that there was more of a disparity in males than females. Now, how can we minimize our exposure? First of all, we can choose organic food whenever possible. And again, in my companion video, I go much more into which are high and low pesticide-containing foods that are non-organic, cleaning them, and much more. So check it out. Now, pesticides also tend to be higher in imported produce, and strawberries do seem to be the biggest offender for that. Now, we can also be creating safer play areas for the children, limiting their areas in that play, especially if it's been recently treated. whether it's in the lawn, gardens, etc. So know when your area, whether it's your yard, your community, your school playground, your community park, know when they are being sprayed. You should obviously know that for your own house for when they come around, but in any school or any type of community area, that information has to be known because that's public knowledge that's out of the public systems or out of the school. So it may take a little bit of digging, but you should be able to find when those spray schedules are, because maybe you weren't around to see when it was done, and so you wouldn't know otherwise. But if there has been a spray done, avoiding that area for 48 hours does seem to significantly reduce the amount that a kid would be exposed to. So again, fresh spraying, that's a problem, much more so than if it's been there for a while. Now, we can, of course, be opting for natural spray pest control methods that are out there. Sometimes we can get our communities to change over, but certainly what gets done in or around our house, we have the most control over. Now, in terms of the indoors, so we can be using the pesticides as sparingly as possible. There are also non-toxic alternatives for use in the house. We can make sure that there's proper ventilation after spraying or after use. So having the windows open, having the fans going, not allowing the kids to be in those areas. Maybe there's a particular area in the house that's more commonly to be sprayed because there's more bugs in that area, or in the kitchen. So avoiding those areas, especially after spraying, can be more helpful. Now, in terms of our drinking water, we can test it. Now, the community drinking waters, they are supposed to test every year and publicly report what is in the water. So that's something that we can be finding out. But we can also be filtering our water, and they can be removing pesticides to provide additional protection. And there's different types of filtrations that can work. There is activated carbon. There's reverse osmosis. There's ion exchange. But here's the thing. Different types of filters work better for different types of pesticides. So testing the water to know what particular pesticides there may be there can also help make a more informed decision as to what type of filtration should be used, should be purchased. And of course, more than one can be used to have more and more protection as well. Now, what can we be doing? Well, first and foremost, educating and advocating. We need to be teaching our children to be cleaning their hands when they've been playing outside. And of course, that can reduce the residues on their hands. Little kids often finger feed, so hands to the mouth that way, rubbing their eyes. Teaching them not to rub their eyes without washing their hands, making washing hands just an important part of after play. Now, we can also be advocating in our communities for what are called integrated pest management practices. And our schools can do this, community spaces can do this, and this is a combination of biological, cultural, physical, and chemical tools to manage the pests in the safest way possible. Now, we can also be supporting our local farmers, the ones that advocate for these pesticide-free or lowest pesticide farming. We can find out who they are. We can publicize it on social media. We can get the word out. We can find out where they are selling their produce. We can let it be known to others as to where they can find that particular produce, and I'm sure the farmers would greatly appreciate that as well. Now, overall, it's impossible to be completely avoiding the pesticides. It's out there. But we can identify the sources, and we can minimize the exposures. Now, hopefully, in the next few years, these practices will grow fast. There certainly seems to be signs that there are people who want to get there, and I for sure am one of them. And most importantly, what are we going to do? By doing this, we're going to make healthier kids. Have a nice day.